Why do we insist on sabotaging the love we crave by constantly testing our partners? It sounds harsh, doesn't it? Sabotage. You might think, I don't do that. I just want to be sure. But what if those little just to be sure moments, leaving your phone open to a flirty message, pretending to be in trouble to see how they react, asking loaded questions about your appearance, are actually small, destructive games? These aren't harmless checks. They are silent, damaging tests that can erode the very foundation of your relationship. So, why do we do this? Why do we create these elaborate, often unconscious, trials for the person we've chosen to be with? Let's break down the psychology behind the irresistible and dangerous urge to test our partners. First, let's be clear. The urge to test your partner rarely comes from a place of malice. More often than not, it's a direct symptom of deep-seated insecurity. People test others when they feel unsure of their own worth or their partner's love for them. It's a roundabout way of seeking reassurance without having to make yourself vulnerable by asking for it directly. Think about it. Have you ever deliberately taken a long time to reply to a text just to see if they'll double text? Or perhaps you've mentioned an attractive coworker a few too many times, gauging their reaction for any hint of jealousy? These actions are born from a fear that whispers, "Am I really important to you? Do you really care?" This is where psychology offers a powerful lens: attachment theory. Developed by psychologist John Bowlby, this theory suggests that our earliest bonds with caregivers shape our attachment style in adult relationships. If you had caregivers who were inconsistent with their affection, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, you might develop what's known as an anxious attachment style. As an adult, this can manifest as a constant fear of abandonment and a powerful need for validation. You're not consciously trying to drive your partner crazy. Your nervous system is essentially stuck in high alert, always scanning for signs that love might be withdrawn, just like it was in your past. The test becomes a desperate attempt to get a definitive answer, to finally feel secure, even if just for a moment. But here's the paradox. Reassurance won through a test is fleeting, because the insecurity that fuels it is an internal state, not an external problem. The unspoken belief is, if they pass this test, then I can finally relax and trust them. But the relief is temporary, because another test is always lurking around the corner, born from that same core wound. Secondly, the way these tests are constructed is often a setup for failure, which creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you test your partner, you're not an objective scientist seeking truth. You're a biased prosecutor looking for evidence to confirm your deepest fears. Let's take a classic example, the mind-reading test. Michael was upset because his partner, Heather, didn't do anything for his birthday. No cake, no gift, not even a happy birthday. He interpreted this as proof that she didn't care. The reality? Heather's family had an emergency, and she was out of town with a sick relative. Michael's test wasn't a fair assessment of her love. It was a trap based on his unspoken expectations. He believed, if she truly loved me, she would just know how important this is. This is a disastrous foundation for a relationship. Expecting a partner to be a mind reader places an impossible burden on them. Healthy relationships are built on clear, open communication, not on a series of covert intelligence operations. When you don't communicate your needs, desires, and disappointments directly, you create a space filled with ambiguity and potential misunderstandings. Another common scenario is the jealousy test. You might post a photo with an attractive friend or casually mention an ex reaching out. The goal? To provoke a reaction that proves they're invested, that they're afraid to lose you. But what does this test actually accomplish? At best, it manufactures a moment of drama. At worst, it shows your partner that you're willing to use manipulation to get an emotional response. It doesn't build trust, it introduces instability. It teaches them that your relationship is a stage for performance, not a space for authentic connection. The real tragedy is that you are not testing their love. You are testing their tolerance for games. And the most secure, emotionally healthy partners are often the least likely to play. Third, and most critically, testing is the antithesis of trust. Trust is the bedrock of any secure partnership. It's the belief that your partner has your best interests at heart. It's built slowly, through consistency, reliability, honesty, and vulnerability. Testing, by its very nature, is a declaration of distrust. Every time you set a trap, you send a clear, albeit unspoken, message. I don't trust you to be there for me, so I have to force your hand. Creating a dynamic where you are secretly evaluating your partner is a surefire way to erode the very trust you claim to be seeking. It keeps you in the role of a detective and forces them into the role of a suspect. This dynamic is not only exhausting, but it prevents true intimacy from flourishing. Vulnerability, the engine of deep connection, cannot exist where there is suspicion. How can you be truly open with someone you feel is constantly grading your performance? Think of trust like a bridge. Each act of honesty, each kept promise, each moment of genuine support is a steel cable strengthening that bridge. Each test is like taking a pair of cutters and snipping at one of those cables. A single snip might not cause a collapse, but over time, the relentless testing will weaken the structure until it can no longer bear the weight of a real relationship. You end up creating the very distance you fear. The person being tested feels confused, helpless, and perpetually on edge, never sure why their partner is upset. Eventually, they may withdraw to protect themselves, confirming your original fear that they would leave, not realizing it was the testing itself that pushed them away. So, if we know testing is so destructive, how do we stop? The answer is both simple and profoundly difficult. We must trade our tests for truth. The urge to test is a signal. It's a bright, flashing light pointing not to a flaw in your partner, but to an insecurity within yourself. The next time you feel that urge bubbling up, the desire to check their phone, to ask a loaded question, to orchestrate a scenario, stop, take a breath, and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of right now? What is the reassurance I truly need? Instead of testing their jealousy, try saying, I've been feeling a little insecure lately, and I could really use some reassurance about how much you care for me. Instead of testing if they'll remember an important date, try saying, this upcoming anniversary is really important to me, and I'd love for us to celebrate it together. This is the work. It's the courageous act of being vulnerable. As the researcher Brené Brown says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. It's about having the courage to voice your fears instead of acting them out. It's about building a relationship on the radical honesty of your needs, not the shaky ground of their test results. The goal isn't to find a partner who can pass all your tests. The goal is to become a person who no longer needs to give them. It's about healing the parts of you that believe love is conditional and must be constantly proven. It's about learning to build your own sense of security so you can stand on the solid ground of trust, together. The most profound love isn't found in someone who anticipates your every unspoken need. It's found in the space you create together, where needs can be spoken, fears can be shared. And trust is a choice you make every day, no test required. Do you recognize these patterns in your own relationships? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, subscribe for more insights into the psychology of building healthier, more authentic connections.